Namaste, everybody. We'll blast right off here with doing an invocation mantra. Sitting with the spine straight. Meditative awareness, feeling that you are life force, you are prana. The breath is the bridge into feeling the prana, feeling the Shakti, life force. We'll chant Om 3 times and then chant invocation mantra. Ooh. Ooh. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navati Tamastu Ma Vidvashavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Om. All right, we just got done doing yoga here, triple crane. Had some people here that are no longer here, but we got a few people with us, which is nice. So, it's me. I've got my slides here. This topic here, we've been trucking along. Last class we did Sutra 10, and Sutra 10 made what appeared to be the simple statement, which was that yoga, the sleep is a thought wave. But as we got into the Sanskrit, we saw that it's actually way more profound than that. I just, one of the yoga students who was here, she pointed out that I guess the link I sent for that video didn't work. Nobody emailed me and told me. So usually I can tell people are looking at the video. I just went on YouTube and nobody got access to it. So I must have copied and pasted wrong or did something wrong when I sent it out. So I'll send it today. I'll send it out to you guys after this class, hopefully, or tomorrow morning, depending on what's going on with the 3-year-old when I get home and if Miriam wants to hang out or not. But so, yeah, we did a really deep dive. We went very word by word last week. And this week, we're not going to be going as word by word and syllable by syllable, because this chunk of the Yoga Sutras is a flow. And we are going to dive into a couple of the important words, particularly vairagya, which can loosely be translated as non-attachment or dispassion. So we're going to look at, I'm just going to read these sutras, and then we'll kind of play around here and see how things unfold. This whole exploration through this section is probably going to take 3 classes. We'll probably be riffing around in here because there's a lot that can be said about vairagya, non-attachment itself, and then also just what the Yoga Sutras are teaching. So I can't say for sure, but I can say that I don't think I'm going to get everything in today that I want to be saying about non-attachment. As I alluded to on Facebook, and some of you noticed, I feel that I've come under the observation that culturally we're in this very weird place about people talking about spiritual bypassing, which is it's a really good thing people are talking about it. And at the same time, people are giving critiques to the yoga community that are mostly based upon the market-based yoga community, marketplace-based community, and not so much on the actual intellectual tradition of yoga darshana or yoga philosophy or Vedanta philosophy. And some of the critiques about spiritual bypassing and non-attachment specifically relate more to some of the classical schools than others. So we'll try to get into that. We'll see. I'm feeling very expansive, so we'll see if I'm able to land into my brain or not right now. All right, so Sutra 11. When a mental modification of an object previously experienced and not forgotten comes back to consciousness, that is memory. Man, that's a laborious sentence, isn't it? Basically, things that have not been wiped from the memory, when they come back, they're memory. So it's just sort of stating something that we all know. Now, if we were to go word by word into the Sanskrit here, there's a lot more that we could unpack, but we're not going to do that today with this verse because we're going to do like an overview first, and then maybe we'll come back and drill into that sutra later. But these mental modifications are restrained by practice and non-attachment. Abhyasya vairagya bhyam tan nirodha. Okay, so abhyasa is a popular word in the yoga community, which refers to practice. Vairagya, so let's see here. If I go here, there's this thing in Sanskrit called Sindhi grammar. So it takes words and runs them together. One example would be yogananda, yogananda. So it's yoga and ananda, or any of these anandas, like our friend Shankar Ananda, who comes to Triple Crane. Shankara is a name, and Ananda, and they put them together. That's Sindhi grammar, particularly when there's multiple A's. Oh, look at what's happening. I had the voice thing on, or it turned itself on. I didn't turn it on. Okay, fix that. It was funny because I first saw that A, an extra A come in, and I think it heard me say A. But okay, so vairagya is vairagya, just like that. So I just put that space there. So sometimes, because this is like an actual transliteration using the international alphabet standardization system. I'm not getting it. ISAT, Internet Indian Alphabet Standardization, Sanskrit translation. I'm forgetting what it stands for. AIST, ISAT. There's like a specific way that you do transliterations from Sanskrit, from Devanagari, from the Sanskrit script into Romanized English. And this is all properly done with the dot underneath the H, which means the gets like a breathy H at the end, like in Shanti, Tinnarodaha. And then these A's are long A's. Abhyasa, Vairagya, Bhyam, Tannirodha. So this is actually, it's an accurate way of writing Devanagari in English. So, but as what you'll often see is what I was saying is people will split these words. So they'll put Vairagya and they'll have like the A there, Viagra, Bhyam, right? To make it more readable. Because it is a little bit tricky. The Sanskrit's got these like run-on words. And we can also see, like a lot of you are probably familiar with the word Narodaha, Tan Narodaha. So this has got another, where the Sindhi grammar has lots of different rules. Just generally speaking, it's smashing words together and making them one like run-on word. So okay, so that was like a little Sanskrit grammar. That's pretty much all I know about Sanskrit grammar. But these mental modifications are restrained by practice and non-attachment. So abhyasa is practice. Vairagya is non-attachment. Abhyam is like the process. I forget what Tian is off the top of my head. And Nirodha, stilling of the mind. Stilling of the mind. Okay, so we'll come back to this verse specifically, but we're going to keep going here. Practice is repeated effort to follow the disciplines which give permanent control of thought waves of the mind. So we have these memories. Sutra 11 was saying we have these memories. They can be put under control by doing practice for a long period of time. So practice is repeated effort to follow the disciplines which give permanent control of thought waves in the mind. So this is not referring to like temporary. Most of us in our practice, we're getting temporary stillness of mind, but like ultimate yoga is when we're getting like ultimate control over the mind. So then Sutra 14, practice becomes firmly grounded when well attended to for a long time without break and in all earnestness. It's a pretty popular part of the Yoga Sutras, where it's basically saying, hey, y'all, you got to practice a lot and you got to do it for a long time if you want to experience the stillness of mind. Now, this is a Yoga Sutra statement. And on the other hand, we do have spontaneous awakening, which is kind of a side tangent. Nice, Kali. She got that. One definition of tan is an intensifier. It means a whole lot of whatever it is describing. That might not be the correct translation for this example, though. I think she's correct. I think she's correct. A whole lot of Narodaha. So practice becomes firmly grounded when attended to for a long time without a break. So yeah, if we want to get this deep abiding peace, we have to practice for a long time. Now, in other traditions, particularly like Vedanta traditions, or somebody like Eckhart Tolle, for example, he was sitting on a bench and he had enlightenment, right? So then some people will be like, well, it's because he practiced a lot in a past life. Yeah, we have no proof of that. So, sorry, I just need to laugh at that for a little bit. We have no proof of that, but we do know that people have spontaneous awakenings. People do it from taking various entheogens. They'll have spontaneous awakenings. People will have them from deep suffering in life. That's a common phenomena when people are having a really hard time. They'll all of a sudden have a non-dual breakthrough. People have it just from self-inquiry. So I'm of the opinion, I'm a big Yoga Sutra fan, but I also dissent from the Yoga Sutras quite a bit in quite a few places. But yes, the Yoga Sutras are advocating their practice manual. So they're saying, hey, if you do this practice, this is the byproduct. Okay, so I wasn't planning on going on that tangent. I can say that more than once tonight, I'm sure. Drishtu Anyus Vika Vishya Prasnasya Vasikarya Samnya Vairagyam. All right. That effect that comes to those who have given up their thirst after objects, either seen or heard, and which wills to control them, which controls the object, is non-attachment. So now we're getting a definition of non-attachment. Okay, hold on 1 second. So this, I actually believe this is from 215. So we've skipped ahead to, I actually don't have my books handy. I might have made an error in my slides, but it's basically saying that non-attachment comes for those who've given up the thirst after the objects, either seen or heard. So it's this idea that we see through the suffering, and most of our suffering is because of how we're perceiving things, right? Because of our clinging. If we were to look at the yamas and niyamas, and that was one thing I thought about doing for this class, was writing down the yamas and niyamas and seeing how when we're not in alignment with, let's say we're grasping or we're not practicing proper moderation in our sex life, or if we're practicing we're failing in non-violence. What are the other ones coming off the top of my head? So when we look at these things, we can see that they're usually because there is a lack of non-attachment. There's a lack of vairagya. So if we are practicing non-violence, which is the first of the yama and niyama, just practicing that in and of itself will create a situation where we create a lot less suffering for ourselves and for others. So with santosha, for example, practicing contentment or accepting things as they are, when we do that, it creates less suffering. But if we're always not accepting things as they are and wanting things to be different than what they are, then we're having complicated emotional responses. So this is a little bit tricky. The thing that's tricky about this is there is the early phase of any of these things, like talking about practicing contentment or non-grasping. Aparagriha, that one's always the hardest of them to say. Non-covetousness, non-grasping. So it's like, are we forcing ourselves to be non-grasping, or are we naturally in a non-grasping state? So the idea with yoga is that through the process of the 8-limb path, particularly the higher limbs of sense withdrawal and concentration and absorption and samadhi, going into samadhi, that we lose the taste for grasping. So it often reminds me of Puppet G, which is, a little immature on my part. Puppet G is a YouTube comedian. He's like a non-dualist. And he does this one thing about everyone's cravings. And he's like, oh, you think you'll be happy when you get your new car, your beautiful partner, your new tantric sex mate. He's like, but it's all suffering of the ego. So it's like all these things that we think we want. It's like, it's a paradox though. So this is where we get into the danger with the spiritual bypassing, is that most people are not in some sort of contact with the inner stillness. Most people don't have like an easy way to tap into a source of joy and bliss that is not based upon a circumstance or conditioning. Most people don't know how to just go blank and listen to emptiness. So as long as we don't have that, and we try to enforce these yogic rules and yogic principles, we always come into the problem of it becoming dogmatic, right? But that's not what yoga is really pointing towards. So I'm particularly was mixing this talk into like making spiritual bypassing a little bit of a focus on it. But when people are like not taking responsibility, or I've got some examples written below, using the avoiding pain, their pain and suffering. It's like they want to be in a transcendental state, but they're just actually not. And so they say they are, like, it's all good. Or particularly when you project it at other people. Like on Facebook, I put up a picture of a house burning and somebody saying like, no bad vibes. It's like, well, if somebody else's house burns down, you should probably be compassionate and sympathetic and try to figure out how to be helpful. If your house burns down and you're like, it's all good, well, that's on you, right? And so a lot of this is, it's all inside work. This whole thing of vairagya, it's not something that you're supposed to tell other people to do, right? That's when it becomes very problematic. Or like if we want to deal with social issues, like, Palestine's really hot right now. So I've seen some people, a good friend of mine put up a Facebook post, and it's like, if you're not engaged in the Palestine issue, you're probably spiritual bypassing. It was a little extreme. I'd like to talk to her about it, not on Facebook, right? So it's like, if you could be opposed to the war in Palestine, you could have mixed feelings on it. And actually the thing that she wrote, it was actually specifically, everybody needs to be doing more political work. So then the question that I was going to post for my friend was, okay, well, what about somebody who has a political opinion that disagrees with you? It's like, people are going to have different views on these kinds of things, and it just gets a little bit tricky. So, but everybody wants to just chalk it simply up to like all of the yogis and all of the meditators aren't doing the work, but it's not necessarily so simple as that, because you're not focusing on, if like your professional career is dealing with legislation, then you deal with it. But other people, like let's say you're a massage therapist, like I am, you spend your day giving people massages and doing yoga philosophy talks. It doesn't mean that I'm doing something evil because I'm not choosing to post on Facebook about politics. But people are getting very vindictive because there's a lot of ideologies that are very much so pointed that like you have to be like feeling deep grief, right? But not everybody who goes through suffering responds to it the same. That's just a fact, right? Like, so some people who have very traumatic, horrible things happen to them, it destroys them. And then other people, they find a way where it makes them like they become happy from it. Like different people have different responses. And we have to allow that to be a reality. And we have to figure out why people would have the different reactions and try to cultivate those positive characteristics in ourselves so that we don't get down on things. So, but back to the Yoga Sutras, 15. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to the beginning. I was wrong when I said that this is all, I had it incorrect. Sutra 11. So Sutra 11, basically, we have memory, it comes up. Sutra 12, if we can learn how to practice healthy non-attachment and we do practice, that helps us get all these memories that are always coming up into a healthy, balanced place. We've got to do this for a long period of time with repeated effort, Sutra 13. And then when after we do it for a long time, we'll get really good fruits, which is basically what 13 and 14 say. And then Sutra 14 describes what vairagya is, the effect that comes to those who have given up all their thirst after objects, seen or heard, and which wills to control the objects is non-attachment. So this is the definition of vairagya. And this is it says SV because this is Swami Vivekananda's commentary. So when we're talking about this high state of vairagya, it's not simply like, it's not a simple form of non-attachment. It's actually this very profound thing where craving is no longer existing in the person, not because of suppression, but because it's actually like genuinely there. But it's also saying that if you do a lot of practice, like if you do more mantra, if you do more meditation, if you practice more silence, if you do more self-inquiry, whatever good practice it is, and those are all good practices, then you will get more anchored into letting go of all of your cravings. Even if you're doing the activity, you would not be addicted to it while doing it, right? So we still need to act. Okay, next verse. When there is non-thirst for even the gunas due to realization of the Purusha, that is supreme non-attachment. So this is continuing to describe non-attachment. So the gunas are, you guys both know what the gunas are, but the mode of clarity, alertness, the mode of activity, action, restlessness, and then lethargy, laziness, slothfulness. So when we're beyond these three things and we see the true self, which is the unconditioned mind, that is ultimate supreme non-attachment. So Swami, the SS is Swami Satchidananda, Integral Yoga, and then same Sanskrit translation, different translation, same Sutra 16. That is extreme non-attachment, which gives up even the qualities and comes from knowledge of the real Purusha. So it's basically, the 15 and 16 are just basically defining what vairagya is. And I've said it, I'm going to say it again. It's not just an ordinary thing. It's a very advanced or a very profound, it's not necessarily make it about advanced, but it's a profound reality of relishing in the present moment from the inside out without needing to find happiness based upon circumstances, right? So we're going to keep exploring this idea here. So abhyasa and vairagya. So abhyasa is practice, and vairagya, one common translation is non-attachment. So we're going to look at the Sanskrit etymology a little bit here. Abhi is for abhyasa. So the root of abhyasa comes from abhi, abhi, going toward or approaching for the sake of. So it's like going towards the goal. And then asa, ASA, is the seat or from. And then if you break down asa as as, it's to sit quietly. So it's actually, abhyasa is very interesting because it's actually saying going towards inner stillness is what the word actually means when you look at it from its etymological roots. So we're going towards a seat of sitting quietly within ourselves. So that's what we're practicing. I feel like, like the whole notion of learning how to listen to the inner silence is so important in our yoga practice. As we can see here, the word abhyasa means moving towards the stillness, moving towards the silence. But how do we do that, you know? When we, Dr. David Frawley, whose work I really like, I don't agree with his politics, but he's great. I mean, David Frawley is amazing. He talks about every different like limb of yoga has a different shakti. It has a different power. So like asana, for example, it has its own shakti. It has its own shakti that moves towards stillness. And anybody could drill into one of those very deeply. It's a little bit trickier to go towards deep, deep, deep silence if you're only using asana. If you're using asana supported with meditation, you can then mix the two together, and then you're bringing more silence into your movement practice. And then the movement practice, the shakti of the movement practice starts to get something that is like this word abhyasa literally means going towards the stillness, which is why in some of the more what I would refer to as classical schools is there's a lot of relaxation between poses. So it's active and passive instead of just like smashing out like a ton of vinyasa flows and like cranking up the music really loud. That's very hard to get a deeper quality of abhyasa, because abhyasa is moving towards silence. It's not moving towards, you know, getting buff. So learning how to cultivate the silence in whatever limb of practice we're working with. So if we're working with mantra or if we're working with breath work, you know, when you feel that silence well up, and there's places and there's points of concentration where we can bring our mind in our practice. It's not really the point of this talk right now, but we just were doing it in the class, you know, like when you're in transition phases, in between poses, feeling sensations, returning to the breath, observing, 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 letting go emotionally, letting go mentally. Those are really big. Like if you're in your yoga practice, but like if you're not really ready to drop your story, and Callie, I'd wonder what you would think of this as a person who works with people in therapy. If people aren't really willing to drop their stuff, they're not going to. You do it when you're ready, and nobody else can make you ready, right? So like you can do a ton of yoga practice. You can be one of these people who does like 3 or 5 hours a day, but if you're not ready to drop it, if you're not ready to drop your self-identification and your ego and your story, then you're just kind of running through the practice on an external way. And that's when they say it's God's grace is really the deciding factor of when one gets samadhi. You know, because you can do the practice, but you're not really ready to let go. And this kind of brings us back full circle to what I was talking about, spontaneous awakening. You know, spontaneous awakening happens when one is ready to let go of all of their craving. When one realizes that they're not going to be happy because they get that thing. So, life example, we were living in Ypsilanti, and I really wanted to move to Western Washtenaw County where there's more lakes. And so I was joking with Miriam. I kept saying, I know that this is my conditioned mind craving a nice sensual experience of being able to have easy access to swimming holes on summer days, but I know it won't bring me lasting happiness. but I still want to do it, you know? Like I want to move towards like I want to get out of the city and I want to get into the country. But I don't have any false expectations that it's going to last forever. So impermanence, I had a right understanding of impermanence. I had a right understanding that even though I will enjoy having more access to the nature in this part of the world, that's not necessarily going to bring me lasting happiness either. I know it's all transitory. So I had like the view of the yogi while I was going after the change. So I wasn't going after the change thinking that once I get the new house, once I pull the equity out of our old house in Ipsy, I will then be happy. And I also knew that once I made the change, I wasn't going to get it all. And I still have all those thought waves. Oh, what if we would have gotten a house a little bit further west? We could have maybe gotten a house that was paid off. We still owe on our house. So these are all like the cycles of the mind craving, you know, like I got the one thing, but I didn't get to have everything. So it shows like my level, I'm not completely free of all of the attachments. The chat. Oh, nothing new in the chat. Okay. So this is just really cool. I'm really excited to hear about the abhyasa with the etymology. And we can say that practice is literally non-different from silence itself. And we find that over and over again in the yoga and Vedanta teachings. Like the word yoga, it's like both the practice method and the experience, right? So the people think of yoga doing yoga poses. That's the method, but it also is the state of union. It means both. And so with abhyasa, we can see like it means practice, but it also means moving towards stillness, which is the practice. Okay, dokie, dispassion, non-attachment. So those are two words. Oh, Americans hate this dispassion translation. Dispassion? I want to be passionate. I want to be so passionate. In Bhakti Yoga, passion is an asset. And Jnana Yoga, generally, passion is a little bit more of an obstacle. In meditation, you know, if your passion makes it so you can't sit still, you know, like you gotta like, oh, I just have to watch that Seinfeld episode, and you can't sit and meditate because you gotta watch Seinfeld. But yeah, so dispassion, it's just a funny word. And then non-attachment, which is starting to get a really bad rap too. So both of these come from, you know, they're both bad translations. To get into my point, they're bad translations of vairagya. So is what we should really translate, a good way to translate it would be without coloration. It would be a little bit confusing, but that's what vairagya is. Without excitement, without attraction. So particularly, so V, the prefix vi is without. It's like a negating. And the second part, ragya, which comes from the Sanskrit root word raj, which means color. So everything in manifest creation has a color to it. So everything is this play of light and play of color. So vairagya is pointing towards being free from entanglement with everything that pulls us out of the infinite consciousness. So this is where like I'm kind of a little bit, I lean towards, and I'm sure that this will be misunderstood, I lean toward the tantric schools on this, less so than towards the Vedantic schools. I'm a little bit more towards the Ramakrishna side of things, we could say, than I am the pure yoga philosophy, because this would be a little bit more like renunciation of like, we're free from all of these, all of the multiflorious flowerings of manifest creation. Multiflorious. Did I make that word up, or does that actually work? I think you guys know what I mean. So this gets into the different schools. And so basically, Ramakrishna and Kashmir Shaivism, they believe that Shakti and Brahman they're not separate, they're one. where the Shankaracharya school thinks that Maya is separate, Shakti, Maya, is separate from Brahman or Shiva. So there's pure consciousness, and yoga kind of points towards the separation and then them coming into union. So I'm a little bit more towards the Ramakrishna Vijnana Vedanta side of things. And this is like really hard things to explain, but these are big like theological conversations and debates. So is the world real or is the world unreal? So Shankaracharya says the world is unreal and separate. It's an illusion. Shankaracharya says the world is an illusion. Yoga sutras are kind of pointing that direction as well, which I pretty much, I don't want to say definitely if they say that the world is an illusion, because I don't know if it specifically says or not. I'm kind of getting out of my lane a little bit here. But Ramakrishna specifically says, this is God. This computer screen that you're looking at right now is God. It's non-separable from the original source of consciousness. It's a radical form of non-duality where like Shankaracharya's non-duality is a little bit like non-duality, but not. You know, it's like, yeah, it's all an illusion. It says everything's an illusion. And so then when people suffer, well, they're like, well, it's all an illusion. So it leads towards this spiritual bypassing thing. But with the Kashmir Shaivism and Ramakrishna's teachings, it's like, no, Vivekananda taught that I should have the Sanskrit memorized, but to serve the jivas as Shiva. Serve all of the Shivas as jivas. So serve every individual as if they are God. Everything is a manifestation of God. So everything you do is an act of worship. There's no separation. There's no, this is not God, or this world is an accident, like God made the world and then kind of left the world for us to all go through our free will. It's like, no, this is God. So this all gets into how one views non-attachment, right? So if one's viewing that the world is suffering and it's just an illusion, like I got an email from somebody today and they said, well, it's all unreal anyways. And this person happens to be from the Shankaracharya line. It's all unreal anyways. No, I reject that idea. I say it's real. What's the use in saying it's unreal unless you have a direct experience of it being unreal, right? And I have not had a direct experience of it being unreal. So what's the use? It's a theory. It's a made up idea. So when people spout this idea, the world is unreal, people's suffering is unreal. It's like, no, people's suffering is real. And we need to do something about it. We need to be engaged with it. So that was a big thing with my non-teacher teacher, Mataji Gauri Brata, was to be engaged in the world and to try to help people reduce their suffering. If you look at Amma, the hugging guru, she is a personification of full-time taking care of everybody's suffering. That's what she's here to do. A lot of other people would be like, that's your problem, that's your karma, I'm going to go meditate now. So, okay, blah, blah, blah. So just reviewing this here, non-attachment it means without the coloration or without the flavor of creation. So non-attachment is almost always mixed with discernment, and we're not going to get to that to the end. And we're probably going to keep talking about that next week as well. Viveka and Vairagya, the two V words, non-attachment and discernment. Our culture is at war with discernment right now, and I would go as far as to say is it's most everyone. Discernment is not very popular these days. Discernment, but we'll get to discernment. Okay, I'm loving Reverend Jagannath Char. I'm not sure if I say his last name right. He is from Integral Yoga, and he has written a really good, super interesting on the Sanskrit commentary on the Yoga Sutras. He said on Vairagya, it is important not to mistake non-attachment for not caring or indifference. Non-attachment is a clear, objective, unbiased state of mind. A mind firmly established in non-attachment is not without emotion. Instead, it is clear, unbiased, and loving. There's a quote from the Bible, and it's just, and Jesus wept. I forgot what it was in context to, but you see over and over again in the life of saints and highly evolved spiritual masters that there's emotion and that there is crying and that there's upsetness when when there's loss. In the life of Sri Ramakrishna, after he left his body, to use the correct Hindu terminology, what Americans say dead, when he was dead, his wife, Sharda Devi, she was very sad, and she was considered to be an embodiment of the goddess herself. And so to help herself get over her grief, she did the Panchatapa ceremony. Panchatapa ceremony is when you get a bunch of cow dung and you make a circle all around you and you light it on fire. And then people usually do it, I want to say, for 5 days. Pancha, 5, tapa, 5 days of fire. And you sit in the middle of this fire ring, and you usually, you set a intention when you go in, and then you do your practices while you're in the fire ring, and the community will keep the fire burning around you. My teacher, who I just referred to, Mataji Gauri Brata, she did the Panchatapa ceremony at Mother's Trust. They've got the Panchatapa building where she did it. She did it for 5 days. And after the 5 days, when the sun was coming up, she had a vision, and her teacher, Swami Bachananda, and I'm not telling the story exactly right, but he was like, "Did you see it? I saw it too." And they both saw it at the same time, and it was that they were to build a temple on the grounds there. And that's what she saw after her 5 days of being in the ring of fire. But Sharda Devi did it to get over her grief from her husband passing. So she used tapasya, she used intense spiritual practice to transform the suffering and the grief that she was going through from loss of her husband. I have a friend, he's a pretty hardcore Kriya Yoga meditator. And he got fired from his job. He didn't know what he was doing. He was doing environmental work. He didn't know what he was doing. He had like a couple kids and wife. No money was coming in, kind of a little stressed. So he was like, started meditating like 5 hours a day. Just doing it. And then he said, like, after like he did a bunch of, then he just felt really clear, and he got into doing computer work. And now he makes over $100,000 a year, probably close to $200,000 a year, doing really top end IT work. So, when we go into these austerities or these long time, like intense practices, from that, we can have experience that gets us an actual unbiased, like I like Reverend Jagannath, he says, an unbiased state of mind. It's a clear objectivity. It's vairagya is. So it's like this neutrality, we could say, or this non-attachment that comes from being anchored in the state of yoga, right? So I really like what he says here. I'm going to read it again. It is important not to mistake non-attachment for not caring or indifference. So not caring and indifference are both tamasic emotions, right? Non-attachment is clear, objective, unbiased state of mind. That's very sattvic. A mind firmly established in non-attachment is not without emotion. So you would still feel things, right? Instead, it is clear, unbiased, and loving. It's very loving. Okay. These are my opinions on what vairagya does look like and does not look like. Vairagya is a byproduct of sattvic qualities, not only a means in and of itself. So people think like, well, if I practice non-attachment through like self-will, I will get it. I would say not really. You probably won't, actually. You'll probably create more problems for yourself. Like, it's all good. It's all in God's hands. It kind of works a little bit, but actually you need to have direct spiritual experience. You need to taste the nectar. You need to taste the honey through putting in effort into your practice or by divine grace. And then from that, then the vairagya is like a flower. It just smells. The flower releases a smell. So it reminds me of this teaching Hariharananda Giri from the Kriya Yoga lineage, and I'm sure he's not the only one to teach this, but the tree is in the fruit and the fruit is in the tree. So it's kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So it's like, where does this vairagya come from? We often will mistake like unripe fruit of this like idea of like acting like we're non-attached versus like the actual ripened state of the fruit, right? So this might not be the best analogy. We'll just keep flowing. So very important, vairagya is an inside job. It's never tell somebody else that they need to be more non-attached, right? It's like if somebody else needs to be more non-attached, we can have compassion for them. Now, if you're somebody's spiritual teacher or if you're giving a talk in like a public setting, or maybe if you're counseling somebody, you could point somebody towards being a little bit less entangled with all of the emotions that are coming along with their circumstances. You could, maybe try to point them away from it. But it's generally not something we'd want to make flippant statements about how, oh, well, it's just because you're clinging, So this next one here, this is a paraphrase. Is a paraphrase when it's not a direct quote. What's it called? Did I get that right? Well, this is not a direct quote. I have it written down. I have the direct quote written down somewhere, but my teacher, Paramahamsa Pragyanananda, my Kriya Yoga teacher, he came in the room and he's, the guru's in the room. It's like fire, and he just looked and he shouted, non-duality is an inner experience. Pause. Yeah. If you apply it to yourself, your life will be miserable. If you apply it to your relationships, your life will be miserable, right? It's an inner experience. So this whole thing of like non-attachment is pretty much like very connected to the non-dual state. And if you start like lecturing non-dual, it is a horrible way to negotiate in relationships. It's a bad way to deal with business dealings. It's a bad way to deal with projects, right? So non-duality is it's an inner trip. It's not about other people. You feel it and then you just radiate the smell. All right? You don't tell other people. It's not, and I don't mean to knock Christians or Hare Krishnas or any of those kinds of people, but like they want to go out on the street and they want to like convert people. Non-dualists do not do that. Like a real genuine person who's into non-duality, you might give a talk or like talk about it, but you're not going to go out and like try to like thump it over people's head. You need to be more non-attached. It's like, okay, so getting away from me and my babble, we'll listen to someone more authoritative on the topic. So Swami Shivananda on Vairagya. And I put my little comment at the top, dispassion and or non-attachment is sattvic, right? It's not tamasic. And we're going to go over this in the light of the gunas before we wrap stuff up. But so Swami Shivananda, just as you squeeze out the toothpaste from a collapsible tube, you will have to squeeze out all the rajas from this bodily tube and fill it with sattva. The doors of impurities of the mind, rajas and tamas, should be removed by heating the mind and the fire of vairagya and abhyasa. This is referred to in Sutra 115 and 16. By increasing the sattvic modifications of the mind, as kamsha, which is patience and forbearance, love, mercy, magnanimity, generosity, truthfulness, celibacy, you can destroy rajasic and tamasic mental vrittis. Okay, so this is what I've been blabbing about. We actually need to cultivate instead of like claiming or proclaiming our non-attachment or expecting other people to be non-attached, we want to focus on cultivating these positive qualities. Like we want to be attached to being merciful, being generous, telling the truth, being honest. He says celibacy. He's a sannyasi. He's a monastic. We don't necessarily need to practice celibacy as he describes it. Like the word brahmacharya, the etymology of it means to roam in God consciousness, to roam in spaciousness. Now it's kind of like hard to roam in spaciousness if you're like really like hung up on your physical body, but you can do both at the same time. I've had out of body experiences while having sex. So it's like, all that stuff's there. So we want to cultivate these positive qualities. And that's what cultivates vairagya, not honking or our vairagya horn. if you will, which is funny because vairagya kind of sounds like the pharmaceutical that men use. Vairagya. So spiritual bypassing. Okay. So that's what Swami Vivekananda says. And then I've totally sinned all over his nice celibate teachings, but spiritual bypassing and understanding of vairagya in light of the gunas. So I threw this together this morning after I got done meditating. So when vairagya, true vairagya is sattvic. It can't be anything really other than sattvic, or it's like precursor vairagya. So really, someone who really has the quality of vairagya will be loving, have compassion. They would emanate friendship to other people. My friend Swami Sahajananda, he's coming here in October to Triple Crane. He's in the Kriya Yoga lineage of Pragyanananda. He is the sweetest guy. He's just such a sweetie pie. And he just oozes this friendship and this loving kindness. He's a simple guy. He's not really flashy or anything like that, but he's just like he's a good monk. So enlightened problem solving would be a sign of having vairagya, like being able to figure out a problem without getting emotional and angry and upset. It's like, oh, well, we've looked at all of the options here and we'll move forward joyfully this way and let go of the negative side effects. I experienced that with Winnie, actually, working with her. She's really good. Like something really crappy will happen. She'll be like, we did our best. We tried. Let's keep going. It's very showing real non-attachment and like love in action, right? So also like with sattvic qualities, we would have insightful usage of spiritual tools. Now, I thought this after I wrote this. When we get into this next category of rajasic vairagya, so it's kind of not really vairagya, but it's like trying to be. But I was going to maybe erase vairagya and put rajasic non-attachment, right? But whatever. I think you guys get what I mean. So one of the things with rajas is it swings back and forth between rajas and tamasic, but it can also swing back and forth between rajas. It swings all of the different combinations. It can go into sattva, but it'll swing out of sattva. It can swing back and forth between tamas and rajas. Tamasic energy and sattvic energy can look very, very, very similar, right? And it's almost, you can't tell the difference. You can look at somebody and think that they're super sattvic, but they could just be super tamasic, actually. Because they share a lot of similar qualities on the surface. Okay, so when we're like on the path of trying to get to vairagya, we strive to become more equanimous. So we want to be like really like full of equanimity, right? But it could be expressing in a more rajasic form, like pressuring other people to do things, pressuring people to meditate for long periods of time. That's very rajasic. So overzealous in the application of outer expressions of non-attachment and equanimity. So we need to show off how non-attached we are. right? That's very Rajasic. You could even maybe have like a little bit of Sattvic non-attachment. Like you could be there a little bit, but then you might like to kind of brag about it because you're still kind of like, you're like a mix of like Sattvic and Rajasic. That would be somebody like me. So, dogmatic or incorrect use of spiritual tools and teachings. So when we're really dogmatic about things, that's very Rajasic. And being dogmatic about non-attachment is one of those things, or putting non-attachment above compassion, right? Okay. So tamasic vairagya is very interesting because and like what I was saying, Sattvic, I was thinking about this one yoga community. I'm trying not to name people too much today because I'm knocking everybody here. But yeah, it's one yoga community I was part of for a long time that I've talked about a lot before. 3HO, we'll just say it. There's a lot of, if you go down to this bottom here, claiming non-attachment, like they're all beyond it, but they're really like justifying crazy psychological sexual abuse and like extreme manipulation, like illegal activity, but they're like always like kind of like claiming in this like non-attached, like what did Yogi Bhajan said? Like he had them like selling illegal ink cartridges that were like a knockoff brand. And he told everybody, if you do it over the phone, there's no karma. And then everybody's all like, oh, we're not attached. Oh, there's no karma because we did what the master's telling us to do. That's super tamasic. It's like very dark, but it can look super spiritual. Oh, I'm doing what the master said, right? It can be very insidious. Okay, so laziness is a tamasic, like just like not being engaged, right? Like people will be uh, like not active in life. They're not taking care of their responsibilities. They're not taking care of their business, all of these kinds of things. That's a tamasic form where it could look sattvic though, right? It's like, oh, that person, they've got such a chill lifestyle, but actually there's like a lot of suffering because they're not taking care of things and stuff like that. It's actually this very tamasic thing, but it looks very sattvic. And then one thing that, some of these things could be Rajasic Tamasic mix, but it's just, I just wrote these things down really quick. But focusing on others needing to change, that's like a big one. You need to like let go of all of your shit around that. You're like too hung up on it. You're too attached. Yeah, that's, I've said that a bunch tonight. So claiming spiritual elevation to avoid problems and negative feelings. So this is very common. I appreciate the people who are talking a lot about, who are really coming after like the people who are like doing too much ayahuasca and stuff like that. It's like, I saw this meme the other day. It's like, so you've done a ton of ayahuasca and now you're enlightened, and it's got like that crazy guy from Willy Wonka, like looking at you. So, um, yeah, like if you look at the teachings on non-duality, it's without support. So you don't need a drug to get there, right? It's you're in the state because it's naturally occurring. Niralamba, we talked about it last week. So like Niralamba Sarvangasana, shoulder stand without support. So self-luminous, Niralambaya Tejase, Om Namah Shivaya, Gurave Satchitananda Murtai, Nishprapanchaya, Shantaya, Niralambaya Tejase, Niralambaya Tejas, luminous, full of light, without support. It's luminous from its own Shiva's own quality shining out. So another thing, we find this a lot with like kind of our Christian brothers and sisters. Evoking God and others when we fail in our commitment. Okay, so I let a person who I will not say, I'll try not to let this person's identity out. I let a person borrow my harmonium, and they brought it to a rainbow gathering with my permission. And they came back from the rainbow gathering and it was burned. They caught my harmonium on fire. Like the whole like wood side. I was like, and he was like, it's Krishna's will. He's like, it was Krishna's will. And we had a really good kirtan. And so it served a lot of people. Here's your burnt harmonium. And I was just like, I don't remember what I said to him, but I just was like, I was like, you know what? You can just take all that Krishna stuff and like, don't burn my stuff and then tell me that I should be grateful to Krishna. You burned my harmonium, and that's not cool. So, um, so yeah, that was pretty funny. But I think uh, he did take it, and then he tried to fix it a little bit after I gave him a hard time. Um, so he's a nice guy. I actually like him, but very, very common for people who are on like devotional paths. You see it with, you know, invoking God. Well, oh, honey, you just need to pray to God, It's like, well, yeah, that's true. And it can be appropriate to say. It can be. It's just a tricky thing. Like some people will be like, yeah, I do need to pray to God. Thanks for reminding me. And other people will get really pissed at you. So it's like, you kind of got to know your audience, I guess. Dogmatic and incorrect usage of spiritual tools and teachings. So I had this in the other one. So this is a big thing in 3HO. Like they've got some really powerful practices, but they're all used to basically get money out of people and uh, keep people like addicted to having to do the powerful practices to keep their energy levels up. They're not really learning how to anchor into the deeper inner stillness. So that's all very tamasic as well. It's very dark stuff to like get people dependent upon like heavy pranayama practice, but then not teach them how to anchor it into deeper meditation or like, I don't know if I'm making sense anymore. But yes, these are all things that people be like claiming to be like non-attached or claiming to be spiritually connected, but it's actually very dark, very heavy. We see it a lot in all kinds of places in the spiritual marketplace as well. And I'm not saying that I'm free of any of this. I am simply a commentator. So what time is it here? Oh, I've gone over. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about Viveka this evening, but I actually am not surprised I didn't have time. But Viveka and Vairagya, they go hand in hand. In short, Viveka, like Vivekananda, or in contemporary times, Vivek Ramaswamy, who was running for president with the Republicans. His name means discernment. But it's particularly returning to discerning the unreal from the real, or the changing from the unchanging. So Viveka and Vairagya go hand in hand with each other. They're important part of Jnana Yoga. But with that, we will stop and see if anybody wants to say anything now that I've blah, blah, blahed for an hour. Yeah, Callie was really struggling to reconcile non-dualism with the concept of Maya. So this is the big hot topic. And I remember I was talking with Mataji Gauri Brata Mother's Trust once, and I said something about Shankaracharya, and she started yelling at me. She's like, "Don't even talk about it. Don't even." You kind of had to know Mataji, but she just was like, "No, no, 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 no." Like cover her ears, start screaming, and she got like, manifest creation is real. Shakti is real. Maya is real. So I come from that line of thinking. Yeah. Yes. So that's the whole thing. My yoga teaching mission is called Yoga Maya. Yoga Maya is the divine power in the world. So it's not that the world is unreal, it's that the world is real, and that we're here to bring the divine power. We're here to bring the yoga all the way in, to be fully aware of the connection of the form and the formless. Not that the form is fake and it's an illusion. The goddess is an illusion. It's a little bit more that the goddess and the god, if you're to personify it in human terminology, are eternally connected and one and the same. So yes, that's probably what you're up to in your work. Right on. Yes. Yes. Mataji called it modern mystics with mission hearts to love and serve all. So that's the thing. And I'll try to send you guys, I'll send it out. There's a short thing. One of the nuns from the Ramakrishna mission, she talks about worshiping the jivas as Shivas, worshiping the individual souls. So when you're doing massage, you're giving massage, God is giving God a back rub. I'm the God, my client's the God. Not, this is all illusion, and just like the body hurts is like, it's just like illusion anyways. Like, no, 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 no. There was a teacher here recently, and I almost turned into Machiji. I almost started screaming. But I'm like, don't be immature. Just because your teacher yelled it and stuff like that doesn't mean that you're allowed to. Okay. Sue, did you want to say anything, since I think Callie's typing and driving or anything?
No, I was just, yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that a lot. I'm gonna go find my book and reread them, you know, in the actual sutras, and um yeah, thank you. That was illuminating for me. I always love talking about, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Such interesting concepts. And but I'd never thought of them with regard to Varigraha.
Yeah, David Frawley does a lot of comparing them to everything. So I kind of ran with that idea.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So it just like brings up that a sattvic, rajas, and tamasic slant on every. Yeah, I guess you could do that on all sorts of concepts. You could apply it, layer it on.
Yes, yes. And also like, what's the Shakti of it? Like this is a big thing in the tantric thing. This is all Shakti. We're swimming in Shakti right now. And how can we empower the Shakti, that energy, to be in its strongest frequency? So Vairagya in its strongest frequency is sattvic.
Sattvic.
And the main thing that I'm really trying to say with all my rambling is non-attachment in English is completely different than Vairagya, because Vairagya is talking about it's a spiritual state.
Right.
You're anchored in it. You are there. You have arrived. It's not like, oh, I'm not attached to bouncing that check because of a condition. It's talking about not non-conditional reality. So, but then people try to apply, and this is a big topic I always am going on tangents about. So this is why, this class going on tangent about it, but trying to apply the unconditioned to the conditioned is very dangerous. It's very confusing. We create a lot of confusion when we try to be like, oh, I'm beyond it, when we're very clearly still in it. And that's super tamasic. It's very dark. It's a very dark form of, it happens a lot in spiritual communities, and that's why spiritual communities, this is my off the hinge opinion, spiritual communities are not dramatic because people are always doing emotional work. Spiritual communities are dramatic because people have bad teachings, or they're not applying the teachings well. So the spiritual communities that I've been in where people are applying good teachings well, very fun to be in, and there's like almost no drama. It's like, oh, somebody just had a disagreement over there. That's unusual. And then other than that, it's just kind of like everybody's chill. But when people have all these like whacked out ideas, it's like, and if everybody like their drama is so important and their process is so important and their pain is so important, it's like, yeah, then everyone's in the processing, which you could say is people doing their work, but I don't know. Yeah, that's my opinion, but I know it's a little controversial, so now I feel bad saying it, but I grew up in a spiritual community, so I'm like,
yeah. No, it's good. It's good stuff, Trevor. Thank you. Thank you for exposing my brain to it tonight. It was good. I needed something to hang on to tonight that was meaty like this. So thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. We'll keep going 2 weeks from now. Keep going with Viveka and Vairagya in this section of the Yoga Sutras. So,
okay, thank you.
Ariel, Om Shanti.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yeah, bye, Callie. Bye, Trevor. Take care.